Started, and I'll just confirm in a second. And the live stream is now operational as well.
Okay, thank you. So welcome back everybody to the licensing board. We're on item 8, which is an application for a personal license. That's planned as a hearing. I shall hand back to Deputy Clerk. I think you've got an update.
I have an update, Chair. The applicant contacted me yesterday advising that he is abroad on holiday, unable to attend today's board meeting, and he has requested a deferral to the October board so that he's able to come and speak to the application.
Okay. Are members content to defer the application? Yeah, and that will allow the applicant to attend.
Content.
Yeah.
Okay,
Agreed.
thank you.
Thank you,
In
Chair.
that case, we can move on to item 9, which is the first of our reports for today, and it's the Chief Constable's annual report. I think we might have a suggestion on this one as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Constable Dixon's aware of this, but Sergeant Grant has asked for a deferral to the next licensing board so that he's able to speak to this report. I'm not sure if Constable Dixon was made aware of that or not, but that's the request from Sergeant Grant.
Yeah, it's not an issue. If the board want to hear the report, I have read it, so I can speak to it, which may save Sergeant Grant a job. It's up to yourselves. I have read the report and I can speak to it.
Okay. What do members feel? I'd be happy to continue actually if members are okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. So in that case, we'll proceed with item 9. We'll thank Sergeant Grant for his offer, but as we have PC Mitchell, sorry, I keep calling you PC Mitchell, PC Dixon with us today, we'll be able to take the report. So do you want to take us through the items, or is it for you, Fiona? I've got it down as a deferral, so it's...
It would be for Constable Dixon to speak to the report, and then any questions that you may have or discussion thereafter for
Okay.
PC Dixon.
Right, thank you. So if I hand over to you, PC Dixon, anything you want to highlight in the report?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, looking at the report, they've obviously provided statistics in relation to last year's figures in relation to kind of inspections and incidents. So they're stating within the reporting period, there were 3,018. Was it 3,000? Yeah, it was. Sorry, it was. And 18 inspections to licensed premises within Aberdeenshire recorded on our innkeeper system. So any interactions with licensed premises, whether it be inspections or whether it be incidents for which we uncovered during the course of an inspection, or whether we're called to the premises, are all recorded on our innkeeper system. So essentially what they'd said was that over the last reporting period, there'd been an increase in inspections conducted in comparison to the previous reporting period. And as such, on top of that, there were also 153 incidents connected to licensed premises as well, which is an increase of 5 from the previous reporting year. So even though there'd been a considerable increase in inspections, there'd only been a small increase in incidents reporting from the previous year. That was one thing to note from the report that I'd seen. Obviously, that mentions the partnership working between the police, the LSOs, and indeed the premises license holders themselves and their management teams, and highlighting work that had contributed to the report. Under the heading preventing the sale of supply of alcohol to children and young people, again, generally referencing the kind of alcohol toolkit and other methods that the police have utilised during their policing of licensed premises over the last year, and that there were no reported cases of alcohol being purchased by a person under age of 18 within the reporting period, which I thought was significant. And that there was no other concerns that required other operational strategies than that was already included over the reporting period. The next heading under the report was tackling serious and organised crime, essentially safeguarding against organised crime groups, of which unfortunately there are some in Aberdeenshire, as there is in every operational area within Scotland. But essentially the preventative work that they're trying to highlight in this report is to prevent these serious organised crime groups gaining a foothold. Specifically things like money laundering, utilising the licensed trade to purchase premises and launder money, for example, is one means that OCGs have utilised in other areas of Scotland, and essentially the operational methods that the police have taken within the last years to prevent footholds being gained in licensed premises for those activities to take place. And essentially, you know, the licensing team are liaising with our intervention staff, who are aware of SOCG activity, so organised crime group activity within the division, to ensure that they're not affiliated with any groups before responding to the board. So that's part of the working strategy that Police Scotland used to prevent that infiltration of organised crime groups into the licensing trade. And that's the framework that we use to essentially deter and deal with that prior to applications going to the board. After that, the report goes into proposed activity for the year ahead. And again, it's, you know, essentially highlighting that we're going to be doing much of the same, working in conjunction with community policing teams, and working alongside licensed premises, licensees, managers, to make sure that everyone's working to the spirit of the legislation and that everyone's supporting the licensing objectives as they should be anyway. Again, there's been a commitment made by the Chief Constable to support an increased number of licensed premises visits / inspections, and to achieve that by essentially continue to do joint partnership working. And they've specifically named some partners in the report there, who we obviously work with, the SIA, the LSOs, the NHS, etc. And there's been a commitment to increase essentially what we provide in terms of inspections to licensed premises, albeit they've not specified a specific number, but their aim is to increase in comparison to the last reporting period. Again, there's a dedication there from the chief to essentially say that we will increase our knowledge on the subject in terms of providing other police officers with the skills in order to target specific issues within licensed premises, and to be able to reduce violent crime, disorder, antisocial behaviour. Do that by working with our partners and by also training other police officers. So as a responsibility from our department, from licensing, in partnerships, preventions and interventions, we'll be conducting training with other local police and officers to bring them up to speed on licensing matters, to give them the confidence to be able to deal with incidents within licensed premises and be aware of the Licensing Scotland Act and the licensing objectives. So there's a commitment from the chief to increase the knowledge of divisional policing within this specific subject area. There's also a highlight in relation to public safety campaigns and national campaigns that have been highlighted as well. So things like It'll Cost You, deterring proxy sales, which is an international campaign run throughout Scotland, and working with the licensing trade to proactively deter that from occurring. And then again, the inspection policy to identify if there are any shortcomings and would be brought to the board should they come to the forefront and as required. And that's pretty much all the headings for the report covered. So the main things being the statistics that have been highlighted, the plans for the work ahead, and the commitment that the Chief's made to increase essentially Police Scotland's activity at licensed premises and training in our own officers so that they can more robustly deal with these incidents with a greater knowledge.
Okay, thank you. There's quite a lot of detail in there. I see Ms. Black has a hand up. I just wanted, before it goes out of my head, the It'll Cost You campaign. When I read that in the report, I thought, I've not heard of that before. So I just wonder how that can gain more publicity.
So I think that wording's changed. The reason that you've maybe not heard that is because the wording's changed fairly recently. You maybe have seen the previous posters, which was two cans with handcuffs between them, and essentially it's purchases by proxy, or the old adage, acting as an agent, is what we would kind of call it many years ago in the police. But essentially that campaign, it's a national campaign, and that's involved, for example, from myself as the Murray licensing officer, is attending intelligence-led, where it can be, attending licensed premises with posters, with, you've maybe seen it in Aberdeenshire, with chalk being written on the outside of off-sales premises to highlight the campaign, as well as pop-up information stalls that we've provided to try and highlight the matter. Police Scotland's also used their own web-based information service to provide to basically highlight the campaign, to prevent purchases by proxy. So that's some of the things that the police have done to try and highlight the campaign. And obviously there's been visits between myself, the other licensing inquiry officers, in conjunction with the licensing standard officers, to premises that conduct off sales, to highlight, preventative measures that they can take, and what their procedure should be in relation to if they suspect that somebody's purchasing alcohol by proxy for someone who's under the age of 18. On top of that, that highlighted issues as well in terms of operational methods such as test purchasing. I won't go too much into that just now, but in terms of being able to advertise that and make that more or brought to the forefront for members of the public. And certainly any suggestions for the Aberdeenshire local authority area would be taken from any member of the board, or from any of the people that we work with as part of our partnership working in terms of social media. The police have highlighted that campaign through our social media, but should any of our partnership agencies wish to do the same, they're more than free to do so. And any suggestions that the board would like to make in terms of what would benefit the Aberdeenshire local authority area, and what can be done to highlight the national campaign, any suggestions certainly will be taken on board.
Okay, thank you. I'll have to look out for it. If it's on the police social media, I'm surprised I haven't seen it, but it's obviously there somewhere. Ms. Black, please.
Thank you. Likewise, I'll go searching for it and then share it myself. My question is a little bit about the stats. So that's just a little bit of clarification, really. So within the reporting period, it states that there were 3,018 inspections or visits to licensed premises, which is an increase of 368 from the previous reporting year. How much of that do you think is down to the fact that behaviours and what is going on has changed between last year and this year, or the previous year and the reporting period, because of the pandemic?
Because of COVID.
And would it be more accurate perhaps to compare it to pre-pandemic levels, and where are we with that? Because it's only giving year on year rather than like a 5-year overview.
It's a good point in terms of people's mentality when it comes to attending public spaces in general and licensed premises. Obviously there was a massive drop because licensed premises weren't open, and even when they were open, they were subject to heavy conditions from the Scottish Government as to what circumstances they would be allowed to operate in, and that made it very difficult for the trade. It was also incredibly difficult to police, because we were policing people's personal freedoms, and legislation brought in by the Scottish Government to try and protect people, essentially. It did make it a very difficult and awkward situation to police in an area that we haven't done before. But yeah, in terms of the actual statistics themselves, we have been operating under normal circumstances for quite a significant time now, certainly within the last reporting period. In terms of a comparison to pre-pandemic levels, I think they'll find that there's still quite a reduction in terms of attendees to within the licensing trade. Certainly this is anecdotal from me speaking with members of the licensing trade, obviously as part of my duties with licensed premises inspections. They would suggest that the numbers within the trade are still significantly lower. In terms of the numbers that Police Scotland have provided there, that's when we have a recorded inspection at the premises. Now, that's not to suggest that that number isn't higher in terms of police officers going into licensed premises, because, you know, police officers, through no fault of their own, whether they get abstracted through other duties, they have to deal with another incident, or they haven't been able to record it on the innkeeper system. I would imagine that number is actually quite significantly higher in terms of officers who have actually attended in licensed premises and conducted an inspection. They maybe just haven't recorded it. But again, that's not really something that I can say verbatim without having figures in front of me. I can only go with what has been submitted. But in terms of where we are, the numbers have increased, obviously, post-pandemic, because we are going into licensed premises and we are conducting inspections. In comparatively to the inspections that we conducted previously, I think the objective from the Chief Constable has been fairly, I know it has, again, I can only really speak from my knowledge from Murray and the passing knowledge that I had from Aberdeenshire, but for Grampian, the statistics from Police Scotland show that they do increase year on year. And again, that a lot of that can be down to the fact that we are providing specific training to constables and to sergeants and to divisional inspectors as to when they should be submitting these inspection reports and when they should be submitting incident reports. And I think that the increased training from our staff in our department to these officers has also led to an increase in what's recorded on our innkeeper system. But again, the commitment from the chief is that each year we intend to increase what we provide as a service to the licensing trade and to members of the public who utilise the licensing trade. So that commitment, I think, has been clear even pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. And my second question is, I'm glad to see that of those things that have been reported, and there was only 153 incidents, which is, you know, a very small number in comparison to the amount of inspections or visits, which is an increase of 5, which, you know, isn't all that much statistically. What I would like to see, if possible, and I don't know whether this is something that the police would be willing to do, is actually see a breakdown of what those incidents were within the categories such as antisocial behaviour, violence, underage drinking, drugs, licensing breaches, etc., etc. I think that would actually be really useful, rather than it just being lumped into one number of incidents, because, you know, there might be a lot more antisocial behaviour than there is drugs incidents, for instance, and it would be really interesting to see what those are.
We have intelligence officers and analysts that essentially provide a report to the police, as to crime trends, and that's something that could definitely be applied to the licensing trade. We do a daily overview for our commanders, essentially, every day, and that daily overview takes into account what incidents have occurred at what licensed premises, and off the back of that, obviously that dictates whether we need to take preventative or intervention matters with licensed premises, which is where our whole PIM process comes from. So we've got the problematic intervention and monitored premises, and that's a police procedure that essentially tackles issues when they arise at licensed premises or within the licensed trade, and we work alongside the LSOs to implement different strategies to guide and help premises comply with the licensing objectives, deal with any criminality, and ultimately, you know, should our intervention work not succeed, that's when the premises gets referred to yourself to have their license reviewed. In terms of breaking down the statistics to see exactly what types of crimes have been committed, I mean, that's something that's certainly achievable. Again, you know, they've lumped that into the statistics for what incidents have occurred in Aberdeenshire, but again, they could break that down into terms of crimes of violence, whether it was specific to licensing crimes, or whether it was issues such as, you know, involving children and young people, or something that links it to one of the licensing objectives. I don't think that would be too far-fetched for us to be able to achieve that.
I think that would be really useful.
I'll bring that back to, I mean, that's essentially how we target, you know, intelligence-driven policing and intelligence-led actions that we take is based on statistics like that. So, I mean, we have the capacity to gain those statistics, and we already gain them. So it's just a case of sharing specific aspects of another report. So I'll bring that back to our licensing inspector and see if we can get that added to the report for the next report period.
Okay,
perfect. Thank you.
I think we'd all welcome that sort of detail. That would help us maybe inform what we're trying to do as a licensing board as well. Fiona Stewart wants to come in.
Just on a couple of points, Chair, thank you. And in relation to the statistics, that's exactly the type of thing that we're hoping the police will provide us with for our policy statement. So I would really welcome that information to come through, particularly, you know, broken down into licensing objectives, crime types. My second comment would be that this ties in with the later functions and finance report that you're going to be asked to consider, that the intervention approach and the partnership approach that the police has with ourselves, the LSOs, etc., the trade, has the result in the sheer tiny numbers of reviews that this board is asked to consider compared to other areas in Scotland. So I think that it shows the success of the work done by the partners, and it has a knock-on positive effect for the work of the board. And finally, going back to the It'll Cost You campaign, we have an engagement session coming up with the licensed trade. It would be excellent to have a presentation by the police on that campaign there, but also perhaps a presentation with some slides on the posters, how it's worked at our next actual board meeting to raise public awareness, and maybe get some comms from ourselves around that in the press and in our social media, because that ticks boxes for us in terms of the licensing objectives as well, and it demonstrates that partnership approach if we endorse the campaign that's being run. So I think that would be really useful. Perhaps if the board would agree that Kevin and his team could prepare a presentation that could be used both at the board, but also invite them along to the engagement session to have that as a presentation exercise for the trade as well, to raise profile both with the public and within the trade, and endorse that campaign formally as a licensing board. So those are my comments, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And I would echo that as well.
Yeah,
and it is worth commenting on the sheer amount of visits to premises that have been undertaken in Aberdeenshire. I think that's a high figure, and to hear that the intention is to go even further with that moving forward is very encouraging, because I'm sure there's a relationship between that and the low level of actual incidents that occur, because the police are working further back in the process at prevention and working with the trade.
in terms of the police providing material for a presentation, that's fine. We have that material already for what we use in the campaign. So to be able to provide that to you is not a problem. I can get Sergeant Grant to forward that on. And again, in terms of the breakdown of specific incidents as to what category that it would fall under, I'm sure that won't be an issue either. In terms of highlighting the work with the police, the LSOs, I think there has to be a significant amount of well, it has to be highlighted certainly that the trade themselves, you know, that the PIMP process can only really be conducted successfully to any degree if the trade engage with it. So the fact that they are actually I mean, again, it's difficult for me to speak completely to Aberdeenshire. But my main experience is with Murray, but any experience that I have from working with the trade, I would say a good 95 to 99% of them have engaged positively with our PIM process, which is why that process works. And ultimately, that's prevent the need, like you said, the comparatively low referrals that you receive to have licenses reviewed is because of that preventative work that ourselves and the LSOs do with the trade, and it's because the trade engage with us. So, you know, a great deal of congratulations has to be put to the trade themselves for that.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, have we got any further questions or comments on the report? No. I'd just like to thank Constable Dixon then for taking us through that report today. I think it's been quite a revelation, and it's always interesting to see how our partners in the police are working with the trade as well. So thank you very much for taking that on today. In that case, we can move on to item 10, update on the review of policy. And I think, is it Fiona, are you taking it, or is it Clark?
I am going to introduce the report, and then I'm going to ask Clark to talk you through the summary of the responses that we've received so far. So this is just what it says on the tin, essentially, is an update on where we are with the consultation, just to keep members in the loop. And we've updated our timeline. We're asking you to note that. We're asking you to note the content and to note that we'll provide a further update at our meeting on the 4th of October. And of course, consultation ends at the end of this month, beginning of September. We're conducting engagement sessions thereafter, drafting the final policy, and that will be taken to a special meeting of the board on the 25th of October for approval. Quite a lot of our consultees have still to come back to us. We appreciate that they're taking the time to consider it, provide evidence that we may need to support either the board's position or their position if they're taking an alternative view. Clark will talk you through the engaged responses from the public. We are a bit concerned that the number of responses are quite low so far. We have contacted our comms team to try and raise the profile of the consultation again with the public through the press and social media. The report is going to the area committees in the next committee cycle to ask for councillors' views to feed back to the board, and I'll be asking all 6 areas, all councillors and yourselves to raise the profile as much as you can. I would say and commend the community councils have taken on board this very seriously, and some have shared the consultation within their areas and their communities as well to try and encourage responses. So I'd ask you to note the recommendations, and I'll hand over to Clark to talk you through the summary of the responses that we've received so far. Clark.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, just looking at the, as Fiona had mentioned, there's not been a great deal of responses. In the main, I'll go through them separately, but in the main, they've been largely positive about the changes. So as you can sort of see from the main policy statement, there wasn't a great deal of changes there made anyway. And the one party who didn't support it didn't provide any reason why they didn't support it, which is not probably helpful for the board in terms of establishing a position of why there is any kind of discourse with that. So nothing really about the main policy statement to say. Appendix 1, licence objectives. Again, there was very little changes. So again, there was no, there's been no kind of problem with that one. Local conditions. Again, changes have been supported on that. There's been no kind of issue with the local conditions for premises licenses, and there has been new ones added there. So far, no kind of discourse with those at all. Appendix 3, the local conditions for occasional licenses. Again, there's majority of support for the changes that have been made. For those that weren't supportive of it was one wanted a condition to be removed, but again, no evidence provided for that, so we couldn't really comment. The other one related to a caterer who serves hot chocolate and uses alcohol, so they find it difficult to deal with 30 minutes before closing for last orders. So that's one thing we can look at. Supplementary policy 1, which is the context and profile. Again, didn't expect much on that one. There wasn't much change there. I think we changed the map and then the profiles of the board members, and that was really about that on that one, and updated the kind of stats and things. So again, nothing to comment on that one. Consultation and documentation. Again, as I say, largely positive. No suggestions were really made about who else we should consult with that we're not already consulting with. One person did suggest that there were other bodies, but again, no further information provided, so we're unable to kind of take that on the board. Supplement policy 3, which is probably one that we thought we'd get a fair bits of comments on, was over provision. Again, we kind of looked at the issue of off sales, well, premises selling both, and whether the percentage of their business that dealt in off sales. And we've kind of found there's a bit of a mix, and I think the reason there is a bit of a mix, the majority are selling 10% or less of off sales within their business. They are probably pubs, things like that have both. There is one respondent who's selling 90%, and we probably will find, if we look back, that will be someone who is, for example, a specialist retailer that might have tastings or might sell the odd thing, but mainly they'll be selling bottles to go away, say like whiskey or gin or things like that. So there is a wee bit of a mix there. Again, 85.7% of people think we've correctly assessed the levels of over provision within Aberdeenshire at the moment. One felt that it's been over assessed. Their issue is potentially with temporary events and fairs. If they're in an area where there is over provision, they may struggle to get a licence. In terms of the measures, there's a bit of a issue with measures. As I say, 28.6 of kind of percent have kind of said that they're fine with it, happy with the measures, but a larger percentage don't know whether the measures are appropriate or not, which I guess is to be expected until we see whether it works or not, really. So, but that was there. And then the rest of the changes were largely supported. There's not a lot of changes to the rest of the policy in terms of that, so that was fine. And then operating hours, again, majority were in support of the operational hours that we've put forward, which included the kind of consolidating those. And one respondent says that they're too early, doesn't provide any information. So again, not sure if that's too early starting or too early finishing, so it makes it difficult to comment. Then looking forward, the rest of the changes were largely supported. Relationships with other regimes, again, there's not a lot that is probably changed in that, and again, the changes were mainly supported. 80% were in support, and the license type and board, again, 83.3% supported that, with one respondent saying there's no mention of temporary events notices and the requirement for such a license. Now, that's because there's no such license in Scotland, so that's why it's not mentioned. So we've been able to answer that one off. Members clubs, maybe suspected we get some comments on that, but there's been none kind of against the changes. Again, very little's changed on that, and they felt that the respondents who have responded felt that what we have in the supplementary policy covered everything we needed to. And then in 8, again, the majority feels that covers everything that's needed in there too, at 75%. The glossary, a third of the respondents that have answered that one felt that we should have a glossary, but nobody has suggested any terms that should be put into the glossary. So it's one we'll probably have to look at. I think we had difficulty with that last time when we were doing the policy. So we may have to revisit that and see what we can put in the glossary. The licensing forum was the last sort of thing that we looked at. And in terms of the kind of engage exercise, so 62.5% of respondents felt that there should be one that's re-established if we can. And we've got some suggestions regarding the administration of the forum. So those that did make suggestions felt that the LSOs and a board member should be there to kind of give it some teeth. That person who responded was actually an active forum member previously, but kind of resigned because they didn't feel it was achieving anything and projects were going nowhere when they were on the forum. So yeah, that's so there's a bit of experience there from that party. Suggestions regarding how we could attract members. People feel that an online forum might make people more willing to participate. Also, they need to feel that they're being heard, and that engagement in local venues would get people to potentially get involved in the forum as well, which is something we could probably look at as well when we're attending events and things. Suggestions regarding activities. Presence at community events was again an interaction with communities was what was suggested there, which is again something we could look at. And 25% of those that responded about the forum said they would be interested in joining the licensing forum. So yeah, there seems to be some appetite for reforming a forum if we can. The last thing that we covered, which wasn't covered in the Engage survey, but was directed to operators, was our booze cruise guidance. And we've had one coach company who's indicated that they're happy to assist with that and provide their views in respect of the guidance. But they've also confirmed that actually that activity is greatly reduced after COVID. They're not running so many booze cruises in Aberdeenshire. So that's really it. As I say, largely positive at the moment for the changes that have been made. Could do with some more responses to really get the feeling of, you know, what the community and what the trade are thinking about the changes, but at the moment largely positive. In terms of the responses received that are not covered in this, because obviously we get responses in every day, there's only probably been about another 2 or 3. Again, had a quick look at those and they are in a similar vein, mainly positive about the changes. There's not really many comments. You know, if there had been any, I would have just described them and gone through them today to let you know that. But again, largely supportive of the changes that have been made so far. So yeah, if we can get more comments and digest those a wee bit more, will give us a better feeling of what people are actually feeling. But at the moment, it seems to be a feeling that people are generally happy with the changes we've made to the policy.
Okay, thank you. As you say, it's just disappointing the low number of responses. It would be good to see more people engage at this stage. Can I just ask a question on over provision? Were there any comments about what we've used as defining areas?
No, so
No.
we expected some, I would have expected some comments on that, and also maybe on the factors that we've used for assessing over provision, whether we set the levels that we've looked at right and things like that. But so far there's not been any. There's been one comment that they think we've over assessed, and that was simply to do with the fact about temporary events or fairs in those areas, but nothing about the localities. Nothing about the measures we've used or anything to date. And I think that includes comments from consultees. There's not been anything that's been against those or suggesting other kind of areas that we could look at. So far, nothing on that at all.
And just to add to what Clark said in relation to temporary licences for fairs and events, occasional licences will not be affected by the over provision policy. It's only premises licences that are affected by it. So we can easily answer that fear that has been put forward by that respondent, and that won't be affected.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goodall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I echo your comments, Chair, about the number of respondents. It's all very well for us to have large percentage figures, but if they're based on 4 or 5 people responding, and we really have to do something about that to make this, all the policies we make here have to be robust. And the more people we can get to respond, the more robust policies we'll have. Again, on over provision, I was interested in restaurants, because restaurants, I've been hearing some messages from restaurateurs as to over provision and how it will affect them, because we're not going to see an awful lot of new pubs opening in Aberdeenshire. And we'll see a lot more closing, but we may see a lot of restaurants opening. And if we
shouldn't affect them because they're on sale premises, and
Yeah.
the policy has found no over provision in relation to on sale premises. It's
Okay.
purely in relation to off sale, so they should not be affected.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mason, please.
The what I was wondering about is the licensing forum. Would this cover? Would one forum cover the whole of Aberdeenshire, or is it? Are we splitting down
No,
into?
no.
No.
The authority from Aberdeenshire Council, and bear in mind it's the council that sets the forum, not the board. We previously had divisional forums reflecting the divisional board areas,
Yeah.
but that was joined into one forum for Aberdeenshire. So that is what's been approved by Aberdeenshire Council, and that is what we're looking to re-establish. We don't have authority. The council has no authority to set up divisional forums. That would need to go back to full council, and that is not what the purpose of this consultation is in respect of. It's about re-establishing the Aberdeenshire licensing forum.
What I'm worried about is the numbers. The whole of Aberdeenshire. There's quite a lot of license holders in the whole of Aberdeenshire who are probably interested in joining. Although that although there was only 2 respondents wanting to join on the list, so I don't know. So yeah, I can expect a lot of people wanting. I've spoken to people with licenses, and they say, well, yeah, I would love to join, the forum again, get back into the forum. But how many?
Interestingly, we put the application form up on the Engage platform as well. And although we've had 2 respondents saying they're interested, we have had no application forms completed or submitted to date.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
That's the current position. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Miss Nichol, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a tiny point. I was having to look through the survey to see how it looked to the public. You have to register or sign in on the website, and I just wondered, we don't do that with every survey on Engage Aberdeenshire. Sometimes it is a case that you don't need those details. I just wondered if that is maybe a barrier for people, that they get to that stage and go, oh, I'm not going to bother. Whereas on other surveys, that's not the case. They can just put in their details.
My understanding was that all surveys on Engage, you had to register with the system to be able to go in and complete the survey. But that's certainly something we can take back to the Engage team. But
so I clicked. That's what I did. I went down the list to another one and clicked on it, and it takes you straight to the survey. It takes you straight into the survey. So I think it was, I'd like to say it was maybe one for Pennon. I can't remember exactly. I thought I'll just go down and try another one. Maybe it is all of them. But I just wonder, I could imagine that is something people go, oh, like they might see it on our Facebook, they might see it on our social media and go, yeah, okay, I'll fill that in. And they get to that screen and go, oh no, I'm not doing that.
Well, we'll certainly take that back, but it's certainly my understanding that you have to register with Engage to be able to complete the survey. I think once you've registered, you can then complete any of the surveys, but you have to register with the system. But we'll find out, and if we can do anything about that, we'll change it.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for raising that. Anything else? Any other points? No, so we'll be looking ahead to the next update on the 4th of October, and then we shall see it on the 25th for approval. And of course, before that, we will come across it at area committees as well. I think that'll maybe be when there'll be some more interest once it goes to area committees and members read it in their papers. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Clark, for your input on that report. We could now move on to item 11, which is the annual functions and finance report. And this is Martin Ingram who's going to take us through this one. Martin, please.
Thank you, Convener. As you have said, this report is on the combined annual functions report and financial report, and as members will see, the recommendations are that the board considers and approves the terms of the combined financial and functions report for the financial year for 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023 as attached as Appendix 1 to your report, and to authorise the clerk of the licensing board to publish the documents on the board's website and to provide the Scottish Government with a copy. So first of all, just to say that I'm presenting this report on behalf of the licensing team, but I wanted to state at the outset that I'm not here looking to take any credit for what's within the content of the report in front of you. As you've already seen from the report you've considered beforehand with regards to the update on the review of the policy statement, again, Fiona as Deputy Clerk and Clark Simpson, one of our paralegals, have been again predominantly responsible for pulling this report together, albeit ably supported in terms of the provision of information and other support from the rest of the licensing team. So it's very much the credit goes to them for the content of the report which is before you. But the reason I wanted to present this to members was to give a little bit of an explanation with regards to why this is currently in front of you on the August board as opposed to the June board. So again, going back to the report, the very first part of the purpose and decision making in paragraph 2.1 makes it clear that there is a statutory, and indeed 2.2 makes it clear that it's a statutory duty on licensing boards to publish these reports within 3 months of the end of financial year, which in ordinary terms would have meant that we would have ideally been looking to bring this to your previous meeting on June. However, due to, and I think some of the board members will be aware, due to some of the ongoing resourcing issues that the team has had in recent times, we were in a situation where the decision was taken, and again, I hope a decision which board members would endorse, was to prioritise some of the weight of work that, again, for Fiona and Clark principally, but again supported by the rest of the licensing team, were looking to do in order to bring the review of the policy statement report to you at the June board, in order to ensure that we were able to take that out to consultation for the required statutory period, and as a consequence be able to bring this report back to you, as Fiona had alluded to, on the dates in October, in order to ensure that piece of work can be completed by the 1st of November this year. So again, hopefully board members will be agreeable with the prioritization that the team had taken in relation to getting that work of and quite a significant amount of work done in advance. We could have potentially brought a report on this to you in June, but I don't think it would have been at the level of detail and informative information that it would have been otherwise. So with those apologies provided to you on my behalf, I will also state that I will not take any credit for any of the information that you may end up getting provided in relation to questions that you may have in relation to the board. Again, Fiona and Clark are both on hand to be able to provide detailed responses to any of the questions you might have in relation to that. But one of the things I did want to go through with you, and again, it's I by no means saying that this was intended, but one of the serendipitous consequences of bringing a report to you a couple of months further down the line is I am able to provide you with an update in relation to some of the goals that we set ourselves for the financial year 2023-2024. A number of the bullet points are contained within page 209 of your agenda papers, page 32 of the draft report. And first and foremost, in relation to the aspect that I've been speaking to you about with regards to some of the resourcing challenges we've had in relation to that, I'm able to give you a few quite positive updates in relation to some of those aspects. So in terms of the appointment of a new service manager to lead the team to begin with, we've recently had internal confirmation that new service manager has been appointed, and I've checked with that new service manager to see whether we are in a position that we can officially announce that on a public forum, and I've been given the okay to do that. So it is Lauren Cowie who's been appointed to that role. So again, a welcome face for those of you on the board. Undoubtedly, she will do a stellar job as new service manager. And again, with that being an internal appointment and someone obviously known to yourselves in the licensing team, should provide a good bit of continuity going forward in relation to delivering some of the other aspects that's been identified within that statement. Not least, she'll be leading the review of the licensing team structure, which we're looking to complete within the next financial year, which ties in with a lot of the other aspects that we're looking to work on. For example, enhancing the application process, so developing online payments and applications that can be dealt with in the website. You'll be aware as well that we have, while not necessarily a new internal licensing application system, it's the old system, as it were, Uniform, but that's been taken on by a company, iDocs. So that migration happened a few months ago, and again, we're currently in the process of working through that transition and making sure we're in a situation where we can effectively streamline the process that we're doing with regards to the processing of licensing applications by the team. In terms of other new appointments, we have the appointment of a new solicitor post for a fixed term of 12 months, and that new person has been appointed. That person is Barbara Alexander. She's currently on the meeting as well in an observing capacity, so she's not officially started yet, but she will be officially starting with us hopefully within the next week or so. It also refers to the training of 2 further trainee solicitors while in the governance seats for their traineeships. Again, those 2 trainee solicitor appointments happened last month, and the first of those trainees, Kelly Bissett, is also on the team meeting with us on an observing capacity. So she started last week, and I think she'll be very swiftly getting involved with licensing applications in the foreseeable future. And then also to say, in terms of clearing the backlog with regards to the revocations of personal licenses due to non-compliance, that's part of an ongoing process that we've been undertaking in relation to relieving that general backlog of licensing applications. And again, I give specific mention to Harriet, the other of our paralegals, who's been already doing a pound of work. And again, that's reflected in some of the information contained within the report in order to get a number of the backlog applications in terms of other licensing types undertaken. She'll then be taking on that work in relation to the revocation of personal licenses. So we'd hope to be in a position that by the end of this financial year, we can be as up to date as possible with regards to that work. So as I say, while there is certain disadvantages obviously to not having been able to get the support to you within the statutory deadlines, I can give you assurance there is no penalty in that regard in terms of not having been able to get that undertaken within the previous or within the 3 months after the end of the financial year. But again, it has perhaps provided an advantage in relation to reporting to you today, in relation to be able to update you in relation to some of the goals that we've thankfully already been able to achieve for financial year 2023-2024. So unless Fiona or Clark want to add anything in particular in relation to the content of the report, I'd be happy to throw that out to board members if they have any questions on the content of the report.
Just before you open to members, Chair, to say that we've changed the format of the report slightly this year. Up until now, we've had year upon year upon year of statistics in table form within the body of the report. We're now up to 6 years. It kind of clogged up the middle section of the report on statistics and didn't really show trends or pick out items of note, be they good or bad. So we've taken the decision this time and moving forward to separate out the statistics, and you have those attached to your report in Appendix 2. Those will be published online, and those can be built on ad infinitum, but we're talking maybe about 5 to 10 year periods. And we've made the functions report more visual in terms of charts with text behind it for accessibility to demonstrate the trends that we're seeing. The other thing that I would like you to consider is we've drafted the foreword for you, convener, but we would welcome anything that you would wish to add to that. Also, in previous years, we've only had a board convener. We now have a vice convener as well, and I'm happy if the board wishes to change the forward to be in the name of both the convener and the vice convener. And with that, Clark, we're happy to talk you through. The main points to highlight are the statistics section and also the financial report. We have come out with a small profit this year, but I can advise that that profit is already being ploughed back in to the work, particularly in relation to the review of the policy statement. In advance of next year's report, I can say that with a current appeal underway, that will obviously affect our finance report that will be put before you next year, but that's still ongoing, so we don't know the outcome of that yet. So with those comments in relation to the format and style of the report, I'm happy to answer any questions, and Clark, who put together the statistical section, which starts on page 202 of the report, will be happy to answer any questions you may have. We continue to see low numbers of reviews, and the number of licenses remains fairly steady. The one highlight is that we've seen more occasional licenses than we've ever had before, and quite a number of them are late applications, which obviously we're looking at how we can streamline the processing of those as part of our policy statement review, but that kind of leapt off the page. Also, the number of applications may be steady, but the complexity of those applications has increased, and certainly having Harriet, our paralegal, on board has helped improve the processing times and help us to work at ironing out those complexities to continue to enable us to bring non-contentious reports before the board. So it's very much a team effort in the work that goes behind not just producing the report itself, but in delivering the work that relates to this report. So that's all, Chair, and happy to answer questions either Clark or myself.
Okay, thank you. And I just commend the work on the report, and I think it was worth just postponing it for that period of time to get the detail in there. And I like the new presentation of the statistics. It's much more user-friendly. Sort of table form, graphs, it's much easier to pick out the information. And I think it is worth commenting on the number of premises licenses remaining quite steady. If you compare them to 2019-2020 levels, they're virtually the same, 643 down to 641. So I think we imagined all kinds of doom and gloom for the industry, and it's good to see it's held up, albeit different types of licenses, different types of operation, but it's good to see that it's holding quite steady. And I would comment as well on the high number of occasionals and the amount of them we see as late applications. That's quite a busy area of the licensing board. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Mr. Menard?
Yes, I'd like to compliment the team and Fiona and the rest of the team for an excellent put together report there. I found that very easy to read, very easy to understand. Nothing but praise on that one. Well done, and you deserve a pat on the back for that, from my point of view anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more comments or questions? No. Okay, so we look forward to this coming back. I'm sure I had something else written down here. I'm trying to remember what it is. Yeah, the success in fees collected. I thought that was quite high as well. There's a lot of work going on here to be at this level, I think, and keep things running smoothly. So again, I'll echo Mr. Menard's comments. Thank you all for the work that goes in. So in
relation to the collection of fees, we have to extend that to our LSOs because they're very much part of the team when it comes to collection of fees. So the fact that we've got such high success rate is the work done between our admin team and the LSOs. So credit where credit's due for that, for that work.
Absolutely. So if I take members back to the recommendations, so I think we have considered and approved the terms of the combined functions and finance report. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
And also, does the board authorise the clerk to publish the documents on the website and provide the Scottish Government with a copy of the documents? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
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 I think the one addition we did agree to, I spoke to Ms Black the other day on it as well, is the inclusion of the vice convener in the forward. I think that would make sense.
Agreed.
We'd welcome that, yes.
Definitely.
Yep, thank you.
Happy
Okay.
to take that on board, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, that takes us to the last item, which is just going over the dates for the next meetings. Fiona, do you want to comment on those?
So our next main meeting is the 4th of October, which is an early turnaround for us, but we've already got a couple of reports deferred from today that will add on to that agenda, and I'll be in touch about an informal session to discuss the outcome of the consultation on the policy, and our formal meeting to finalise the policy will be on the 25th of October, and those dates should already be in your calendars and invites sent out to you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I can confirm that the meeting has now concluded and the recording will be stopped. So thank you to everybody for your interest in this business and your participation in the meeting today. I'll just wait for the recording to go off.